Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Backrooms analysis video. Today I'm going to dissect the film itself and attempt to provide some answers to some of the movie's biggest questions. Also, I really want to connect what the movie shows to the rest of Kane's series. I'm going to make this video kind of based off the idea that you've already seen the movie. So there will be spoilers in this. I'm going to do a spoiler-free review at the beginning. I'm not going to do a full plot recap because I feel like that would take up too much time, and if you want a full plot recap, just go watch the movie. But yeah, so today we're really going to dissect all the characters. I'm not going to go into very tiny little Easter eggs, especially because I don't have the footage for that yet, because most of what I have to work with is all screen cap stuff, nothing in 4K or in really good resolution anyway, so I don't want to spend time trying to dissect through blurry images of people recording the film in the theaters. I really want to talk about the overall themes of it and the overall messaging that gives us an indication of where the series is going and kind of accents the rest of the series up until this point. So without further ado, let's jump right into the analysis. Okay, so this first chapter is just going to be a spoiler-free review. You can watch this part if you haven't watched the film already to know my specific thoughts, and then go watch the movie, because then the rest of this video is going to be spoilers. So overall, I absolutely adore this film. Kane provides the same appeal in this that his YouTube series had for me. I really love this series because it takes something as small as a minute-and-a-half video and can turn it into a 15-minute analysis. Kane provides the same level of depth to this film without it being inaccessible to people who haven't seen it before. I took many people who have not seen the entire series to this movie, and they still understood the point of it. They still got what the Backrooms is. I think this is where some of the criticism I've seen of the movie really bothers me. I know this is high praise, but this film to me is very similar to The Shining in terms of ambiguity. In that movie, you aren't really told why the hotel is acting the way that it does. You never know why Danny has the shine. He has one conversation with Halloran about it, and that's all you get for the entire movie. You also see a lot of similarity, or at least I see a lot of similarity, between Clark and Jack's characters in the film. Both are one push away from the deep end, and the space they're in, for Jack it's the Overlook Hotel, for Clark it's the Backrooms, just gives them the extra shove that they need to really lose it. Ultimately, I think this movie really makes you think about the nature of the complex, and that's really the whole point of it. I really think people who have trouble with this movie not quote-unquote giving answers, first off, I think they're wrong, because the movie does give you an answer as to what's going on. Clark almost outright says it. But it also gives you the freedom to think for yourself, and that's something that media nowadays sorely lacks. We have way too much in movies and TV shows of ambiguity being a problem for people, and ambiguity being a problem for writers to commit to. Everyone wants to provide a straight-up answer to everything, and that totally ruins the mystery, in my opinion. I think that the thing that makes Kane's series so amazing is the fact that the series has been going on for 4 years, and I could still go back to a video from 2022 and dissect it and still talk about it. And it's still relevant because we don't really have all the answers yet. It's worth digging into. And this film just does that on the level of a major motion picture. Everything in this film was exactly what I wanted to be. The characters were what I wanted it to be. The async stuff I thought was very good. I thought Kane showed a lot of discipline in how he used async. They're very much in the movie, but they're in the background of it. That is my spoiler-free review. I love this movie. I thought it was fantastic, and I think it does a really good job of introducing people to the concept, because ultimately that's what this movie needed to be. It needed to be a proof of concept to general audiences that this type of thing is exactly what people want and can be profitable. So hopefully Kane can go even further into stuff that's more advanced in the next installment, whatever that may be. But for right now, let's dig into this movie and its characters. Let's talk about Clark. Clark's declining mental state in this movie is very applicable to the nature of the complex itself. He basically tells the audience exactly what the nature of it is, with the idea of it continuing to remember things from reality, and the more it remembers something, the less it does. Clark, on his own, refuses to accept responsibility for the way his life turned out and continues to isolate himself and put up walls. Clark's rejection of reality is what makes him embrace the complex so wholeheartedly that he sees the beauty in the replication and the nature of the complex misremembering. He said himself that he likes being alone. It's how he's, quote, wired. And Clark himself is stuck. He hurts people, and he tells Mary in the dinner scene he doesn't want to change. Throughout the movie, Clark keeps reliving the same argument he had with his wife that got him thrown out of the house. Every time he revisits that argument, he never accepts responsibility for his part in the marriage falling apart. He consistently puts it on his wife that it's her dragging him down instead of him dragging himself down. Just like the complex misremembers itself until the spaces are completely unrecognizable, Clark misremembers his past until he can convince himself that nothing was his fault. This is why he wants to stay in the complex at the end of the movie. He feels like he has a purpose there. He understands it, and he thinks the complex understands him. And we could see this through the mural he painted. And there's a lot going on with this mural. The main thing I take away from this is the giant picture of Pirate Clark lifting someone to an open window. A lot of people kind of speculated that this is like a glimpse into the future of him trying to attack Mary, considering the fact that the illustration has a coat hanger, or what looks like a coat hanger, in its hand, and Mary has one later in the film. But I don't think that's exactly what's happening here. I think this is Clark illustrating what he said to Mary when he calls her. He calls her on the phone after he's been in the complex for probably weeks and says, I opened the window, I'm not coming back. I think that this is a visual representation of that. Through examining his own still life copy and the entire nature of the complex, he's being lifted up to the window, like enlightened, and that's what Pirate Clark's doing for him. So through Pirate Clark, Clark has accepted the version of himself that is pretty much the worst version of himself. The version that hurts people, the version that pushes people away. Other elements of this mural that I think are really interesting is the tables don't bleed thing. I think that's Clark kind of figuring out for himself what still lives are. I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of this mural that I really don't understand, and it's something I'm going to have to keep looking at and digging into to really focus on it, to really pick apart everything. Some things that are interesting about the mural is the thing that says unrealized, the big scribble that says unrealized, all the drawings of the hazmats. I think that this means that Clark has at some point observed Async, and his new objective while being in the complex was then to discover what Async was really doing. I think that's why we see everything with eyes and images of lightning bolts and power, because the complex was, or Async was, I guess in Clark's view, trying to, or siphoning off power from his store. I think that's what he's trying to kind of do here and convey. And we know that Clark writes things down to kind of space them out. That's what we saw him doodling throughout the entire film, because he's an architect. That's how he thinks visually. But I think that's kind of that's all I'm going to be giving for the mural, because there's a lot on the mural that I still am not totally sure about. So I think that's really the best analysis I can give for Clark. In the end, he accepts the worst of himself, he refuses to change, and is comfortable going in these loops where he consistently relives the past, and nothing ever changes. That's the exact nature of the complex. He's kind of the audience's in-character into how the complex works and how it affects people. This constant going into the loop and accepting the worst version of himself is ultimately what gets him killed, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but let's talk about Mary. Mary has a lot of the same issues as Clark in terms of not letting go of the past. After the cold open, we see her childhood home being destroyed, a physical manifestation of the past fading away, but Mary then keeps the handprint from the concrete outside her home and carries it with her throughout the movie. Another physical metaphor, this one is for her inability to let go of the past. Just like Clark, she keeps living in a version of her life where she can save her mom, and she could have helped her mom overcome her illness. I think that's the reason why she's even a psychiatrist in the first place. That then fueled Mary into trying to help people. I also think Mary's self-help book and her companion tape is a great representation for the nature of liminal spaces and the complex as a whole. If you actually listen to what she says on the tapes that play throughout the movie, she isn't really saying anything actually helpful. It's all basically surface level advice with no real substance. Just like the complex is a surface level recreation of standard without any actual substance at all. You can really see this in the scene where Mary watches her own commercial on TV. She looks utterly bored and even disappointed and sad by it. What makes Mary different than Clark in the end though is that she actually does let go of the past and fights back. Her willingness to destroy the handprint and use it as a weapon against the Captain Clark still life shows that she can actually change, and she won't be stuck living in the past forever, unlike Clark, who has accepted that he does not want to change and will never let go of the argument he had with his wife. With our two main characters discussed, let's talk about the still lives. The biggest revelation that the movie gives us is in relation to the still lives. We can now say without a shadow of a doubt that still lives are indeed copies, or as Clark puts it, memories of people from Standard. We see 5 still lives in the movie. Clark comes across the Archibald Leland Stutter still life and the red-headed still life in the Christmas room and the bearded still life in the dinner scene with Mary. Side note, I don't know why it's called the Archibald Leland Stutter still life, but I think it's a really funny name. These 3 are non-hostile. The Archibald Leland Stutter still life only flicks on and off his lamp. The bearded still life is fairly comatose, and we see the red-headed still life is fairly calm until the 4th still life, Captain Clark, enters the room. Now, Captain Clark is the only still life we see be hostile in the entire movie. So let's discuss why. I believe the reason why Captain Clark is the only hostile still life in the film is that still lives and the complex in its creation of them copy a person's emotions as well as their physical form. In the first scene we see Clark, he tells Mary, quote, "I hurt people, it's just the way I'm wired." We also see him consistently miserable and angry every time he's in his store and close to the null zone. I also believe that this is the reason why the Captain Clark still life is also a much more accurate version of Clark, and why it can bleed and feel pain is because the real Clark has spent all his time in his store so close to the null zone, giving the complex ample time to copy him and his entire emotions and his mannerisms. But why does Captain Clark not attack and kill Clark earlier? A small detail I notice is when Clark finds Naren's empty hazmat suit, there's a broken mirror in this room. This room is directly connected to the den area where the Captain Clark still life has been hoarding a lot of stuff and where it kills Bobby. The existence of a mirror in this room means that the Captain Clark still life does know what he looks like and could recognize that Clark is him. I think this is why he picks up the camera later. He's mimicking Clark holding the camera himself. But Captain Clark is the worst version of Clark. He represents all of Clark's negative attributes, his hostility, his pain, and his failures. This is why he's dressed in the costume that Clark can't stand wearing. I also think this is why Captain Clark kills Clark at the end of the film. During the dinner scene, Clark accepts that he does not want to change his behavior. He wants to stay stuck in the past and wallow in his existence. He even tells Captain Clark this. He says, "We don't need to change." Then Captain Clark kills him. It's almost like Clark is telling Captain Clark it's okay to kill him and be a hostile monster instead of being more human like the real Clark. I think this is also the reason that we see the red-headed still life flee when Captain Clark enters the room. She is clearly supposed to be a copy of Barbara, Clark's wife. The complex remembered her fear of Clark and his hostility. So to summarize, the reason why Captain Clark is hostile towards everybody that's not Clark, up until Clark gives him a reason to be hostile, is because Clark says he hurts people. That's just the way he's wired. The complex takes that literally and copies Captain Clark as an actual monster who does in fact hurt people and kill them. The last still life we see in the movie is the one of Mary. This still life is similarly stuck and unmoving like the bearded still life, as the complex copied her in the moment that Mary realized her future was not secured in her conversation with Phil at Async. So to summarize, we know now absolutely that still lives are copies of human beings from the real world, and the reason why the Captain Clark still life is the only hostile one is Clark has spent all of his time in his store, and the complex has fed off his negative emotions to the point that it has created a actual active monster that is killing people in defense of his own territory. I think that's also the reason why for a long time the Captain Clark still life doesn't kill Clark, is because it recognizes Clark as himself and is trying to be more human like it, until Clark gives it a reason to not change by literally telling it it's okay, we don't need to change, it's just the way we're wired. So he kind of defaults back into his mode of being hostile and killing Clark and then chasing Mary. With the still lives out of the way, let's talk about Async. The film opens in a very unexpected way, I believe, with immediately showing us Async and immediately showing us Naren Warren in attempting to context standard. I also was really excited, as was everyone, when the Async logo was like the first thing to appear on screen. I thought that was awesome. Naren then discovers a new hallway in which parts of Clark's store are already copied in there, like the banner. We also see a seagull that has fallen through a null zone that's most likely in the parking lot of Clark's store. I believe that this hallway was recently created, as Naren does not seem to know the layout, and he has clearly been in this area with the radio and all the stuff set up for some time. Eventually, Naren is killed by Captain Clark, which, by the way, I have to put a pin in this, because I see a lot of people on Twitter and a lot of people on other forms of social media not understanding. This is Captain Clark. You can very clearly see the peg leg, you can see the pirate hat on him. It is him. It's not the life form. Captain Clark still life is the only antagonist in the entire film. There is no life form. There isn't anything else of pursuing Naren. It's absolutely Captain Clark. This has been bothering me for some time, that it clearly is him. So, given Naren's death, we now have a worse Peter Tench situation on our hands. This makes me think back to George and Marvin's conversation in Static Dead End, when George says they won't let it happen again. Well, so much for that. This is even worse, because he's completely dead. Not even lost like Peter was. The rest of the Async exploration in this movie is incredibly interesting. They seem to have been monitoring Captain Clark for some time. After Naren is killed, they go off on the expedition, find his camera, and then start to set up places in which to monitor Captain Clark, which is like the caveman cutout that Clark finds. So in those 10 days between Naren's death on June 19th, and when Clark finds the complex on June 29th, they set up the cutout, they set up the camera, and they're already starting to set up a trap in the copy of Clark's store towards the end of the movie to capture the pirate, Captain Clark. I really like how Async more or less succeeds in executing this plan. They are able to capture the still life, and they're able to bring it back to Async, which is not something they are particularly known to do, is succeed in the web series. And the end in which Mary finds them, which was, again, another little victory for me, that I predicted that that's exactly what was going to happen in that scene, is fantastic. The shots of the threshold, the entire scene in which she is brought to Async gave me goosebumps both times I saw it. I thought it was awesome. The biggest revelation that we really get from Async in this movie is really just how unprepared they were to even discover the complex in the first place. Phil tells Mary that they are a MRI manufacturer. I think that really accents the ideas that Kane has been building up through this entire series of how unprepared Async really is to find the complex. They just make MRI machines, and they found a way into another dimension. I think the way Phil describes the complex to Mary is fantastic. He can't explain it, no one can explain it, and they're trying their best to stop null zones from opening everywhere and discover anything they can about how the complex works, because, just as Ivan said in I Remember, it's the greatest thing to ever exist. Overall, I think Async's involvement in the film is fantastic, and I think that they are absolutely setting up the next installment, whatever it may be, in whatever form it may take, to have much more Async stuff in it. And I think that the idea that they are barely holding on to the wheel of this car, if you will, and looking for any crumb of information they can get off of Mary is fantastic. Anything that she learned about being in the complex, they want to know, because they're just trying to find out a little bit more about something completely unexplainable. And I think Kane did a great job setting the groundwork to expand on async in another movie or the series. Let's now talk about what we learn in this movie about the complex itself. The aspect of the complex that we get the best explanation for in this movie is its ability to copy or remember spaces from the real world. We see countless places replicated from the real world inside the complex, so much so that it's hard to keep count. We kind of knew that this was the case following all the found footage videos and even all the way back in Found Footage 1, but the movie really dials it to 11 with this. Speaking of the complex's ability to copy spaces from the real world, we do get a slight glimpse of the green light for 1 second in this movie. So the copying nature of the complex is really driven home here, and I still believe that the complex copies spaces that are near null zones. This would explain why Clark's store is nearly totally the same in the complex's recreation, and why the Captain Clark still life is really close to being an accurate copy of Clark himself. Clark spent the most time near a null zone. We know that the complex can't copy moments very fast. That throne room area in which Clark finds is a copy of the moment that Clark falls in the chair while filming the commercial with Bobby and Kat. That's why the chair is half in the ground and Bobby and Kat's shoes are clipped into the floor where they were standing. It could copy little parts of that moment, but not everything. The longer a moment or a place exists, the more accurate the replica. This reminds me of Kane's track from Found Footage 2, Old Objects in Quiet Rooms. Old objects like the George Brem painting on the wall in Found Footage 2 are copied easier and copied better than things like Bobby and Kat's shoes, which the complex only saw for a moment. I also think we can get a hint as to when the complex is copying stuff, as in the movie, Clark's power is flicking on and off, and I think when his lights flicker on for a long period of time and then go off, it's the green light and the electromagnetism messing with the real world as it's copying spaces. Overall, of course, I adore this movie. I think this is easily Kane's best work ever, and I really cannot wait to see what Kane does with the elements of this film in a potential sequel film or the series. I really want to know what Async's evaluation of a still life is, like if they're able to come to the same conclusion that Clark did. I think that the confirmations we got as fans about other stuff in the series, about the way the complex remembers spaces, the still lives themselves, I think they were all deeply satisfying, and really the coolest thing was getting a clear look at a still life for the first time. It was awesome after having to look at a blurry image of a still life for the last nearly 2 years. Obviously the little Easter eggs were great. But my favorite one is an oldest view Easter egg. Obviously, the one of the Revershun Ventures sign outside of the destruction, like the destroyed parts of Mary's old house, was a really neat callback to the oldest view. But my favorite is a musical Easter egg that Kane added in the scene where Clark looks back at the wall after he's found the complex. That moment got one of the biggest pops out of me throughout the entire film, because I have such intimate knowledge of the Oldest View soundtrack as well that I instantly recognized it. I thought that was an awesome little Easter egg. But overall, this is still one of the greatest films I think I've ever seen, and I really am. I just, in nature of all Kane's work is, I love all his stuff. So yeah. That's my movie analysis video. I think I might revisit some of the concepts in this later to dive into it more. I just really wanted to go over the main stuff. I really wanted to go over Clark and Mary's characters. I wanted to go over Async's role, the nature of the complex, the nature of the still lives. I really wanted to take a deep dive into those main big things. Again, not going to pick apart little Easter eggs as much. Because the footage I have is clearly not that great. So I apologize for the quality of it, but this is what I have to work with. I wanted to say again, thank you guys so much for the support on everything. I know I'm like a broken record saying that, but the timeline video got 100,000 views, and I honestly, again, could never have imagined anything I make ever doing that well. Like, that number is almost incomprehensible to me. So I'm so thrilled and happy, and feel very welcome that everyone's really enjoying what I'm making. So I'm going to continue to make more videos. The next video I'm going to make is going to be a Backrooms encyclopedia video. It's going to be a video that basically acts as like a guide to the Backrooms, to Kane's stuff, deep explanation in a lot of different terms, a lot of different dates, important things. Not so much like the timeline videos, something that you could actually view more as a companion piece to the timeline video. That way, if you ever are confused, oh, what's a still life, I'll have an entire video with every single thing put in there that we have to dissect it. After that, eventually at some point, I'm going to do an out of sync analysis video where I go through literally every single track and out of sync and analyze that. That's going to be a really big video, but that's not coming for a while. The next upload will be the encyclopedia, and I'll have updates for you guys, of course, of when that's going to come out. But thank you guys so much for watching this video, and so much for the support on all my other stuff, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. See ya!